Hello and welcome to another recap. You will notice I've changed the format again. It's just simply because the last format I had with the blue background and stuff, it was causing YouTube to play in a lower resolution when watching on a big screen on like a television. Maybe it was too much to handle or whatever. You can change your settings to override that so it still plays it in HD, but if people don't have that setting on and they don't know how to turn it on, my videos were coming up blurry, so I needed to just make sure I went to a more basic format just to stop that from happening. But yeah, on to the chess. The last game of 2024 to look at, and then I'm all up to date and onwards and upwards for 2025. So this was round 5 of the Cambridgeshire County Championship. It was on the Sunday afternoon against a gentleman named Alan, who opened with C4, the English opening, which I'm familiar with. An opening I used to play, played it for about a year. I respond with knight to f6, and then I fianchetto my kingside bishop. You know, when they push this pawn, it just softens this diagonal up a bit. So I like to place my bishop there. White also fianchettos his kingside bishop, common in the English. Castle, d3, and c6. So I'm just blunting the bishop off on this diagonal, and I'm going to use it to likely thrust in the centre as well with d5. Knight to f3 and d5. Takes, and castles. And then now I spent a while trying to decide between d4 or knight to c6. I decided on d4, and the reason for that is because it comes with tempo on this knight, and when the knight moves, it's obviously very strong advanced central pawn covering these squares. And if white ever wants to expand in the centre with e3 or e4, let's just make a move. If he wants to go here or here, I'm going to take, and then when he takes back, these pawns are what they call hanging pawns, where they're not isolated, but it's just two pawns together, and they become targets because they're if this one pushes forward, let's just say this one pushes forward, this square becomes weak and that pawn becomes backward, and vice versa with this one. This square is weak, that one's backward. So if you can keep attacking these pawns, then they can become weak. This diagonal will become a bit weak as well. He's probably going to have to shuffle his king over at some point. It's opened my queen up. So yeah, I like the look of that. But at the same time, these pawns can be good for white. Obviously, he's got two central pawns compared to my one, and they're mobile as well. So if you've got a mobile centre, then it's good. So pros and cons, but that's why I went for d4. Um, Turns out that in this position, 96% of masters play knight to c6. So knight to c6, clearly the better move here. Um, the engine likes d4, but I always go with what the master players favour because I think that's the best way to learn your openings. Run your games alongside a master database, see what they played in that position, try and work out why. So if I was to look at this, I would say, okay, well, it develops another piece instead of pushing a pawn, which you're taught as a beginner. Don't push your pawns more than once in the opening. Get all your pieces out first. It's just more flexible. If white doesn't play d4 himself, I can always play d4 again later. I'm now actually threatening to play e5 because this knight's obviously supporting this square, and I'm threatening to get two pawns in the centre. The pawn on d4 would be blocking my bishop in, and at the minute this pawn is blocking this bishop in, so when I push it, it then opens his bishop. So an accumulation of lots of small reasons to why I think knight c6 is heavily favoured by the master players. But yeah, regardless of that, I went d4. But those were the best two moves, d4, knight c6. It's what all the masters played, and it's what the engine recommended. So I was clearly looking at the best two candidate moves. Knight plays knight to e4. Sorry, white plays knight to e4, which I was happy with because takes, and I've now doubled his pawns, his central pawns, and there's no knight blocking this bishop now. And I bolster my centre with e5. So 10 moves into the opening. I've damaged white's pawns. I've got castled, and I've equalised. In fact, not just equalised. If we just let the evaluation bar run, you can see it slightly favours black by about 0.5, so about half a pawn's advantage. So to have a slight edge with black after 10 moves is obviously good going. White plays bishop to g5 here, attacking my queen. So I play queen to b6, just getting out of the way, and also with a threat on this pawn. White brings his queen to d2 to defend said pawn, and also creates a battery with this bishop. And so the reason you'll see a lot of players creating batteries with their queen and bishop when you fianchettoed is, like I explained in my first video, when you fianchetto with kingside bishop, these bishops are really important. Because you push this pawn, these dark squares around my king are now weak. So if white can bring his bishop down to, let's make a move, white can bring his bishop down and force me to trade my bishop off, then there's going to be a lot of juicy squares around my king that white can take advantage of. So that's the idea of creating these batteries and trying to trade off the fianchetto bishop. Just leaves my king weak. It's an idea you can do against opponents at fianchetto, and you'll see players doing it to you. There's lots of ways you can respond to that, but to be honest with you, I'm not worried because my two central pawns are on dark squares. I now realise white's going to trade it off, so I play f6, adding another pawn on dark square, which forces him to come to h6 because obviously he can't go back to these squares, and if he goes back to here, he's going to get trapped. So it forces him to come here, and then after the trades which occur, he's now had to vacate the defence of this pawn, and now after 14 moves, I'm a pawn up. And like I say, you can see all my central pawns are on dark squares, so this bishop wasn't great anyway. So yeah, I'm happy here. I didn't grab this pawn so confidently at the time. I spent more time than I care to admit calculating whether that was safe, probably about 15 to 20 minutes. Simply because any experienced chess player will tell you that grabbing a pawn before you've developed all your pieces, you can see I've still got 3 undeveloped pieces here, is dangerous business. A lot of chess coaches, chess teachers will always teach beginners never grab a pawn until you've developed all your pieces, simply because it can backfire. For example, if this bishop wasn't defending this pawn, straight away white has rook here and he can win his pawn straight back. And then, my queen has to spend another tempo moving. They can then bring the other rook in, and before you know it, they can get a lot of activity for that pawn. So, but not in this case. In this case, I felt like it was safe. I took it. The engine agreed it was the best move. White responds with rook a to c1. He just wants to bring his rook down to c7, and along with the queen, checkmate me on h7. So I block the c file off. White then plays knight to h4, and what he's looking to do here is to sacrifice on g6. So if I ignore his threat, he's going to take, and white can just get a draw here with a perpetual check. And yeah, so I had to defend that. So I played rook to f7, and what this does is, if white was to sacrifice now, I can just simply block the check. No, sorry. If I block the check, that actually runs into a perpetual as well. During the game, that was my idea. My idea was, okay, I'm going to block the check. And, he can grab this pawn, so he restores material balance because he's got 3 pawns for the knight. But my position's just better. This bishop's active, this rook's active, my queen's developed, my knight's developed. His bishop is just staring at this pawn. His bishop can't come out because my bishop's covering that. So, if we were to run the evaluation on here, you can see it heavily favours black. But I completely missed the fact that actually, rather than take this pawn, he can just get another perpetual. So if he had a sack that night, he would have got a draw because I didn't see that. What you're actually supposed to do is play king to f8 here, and the rook carrot continues to defend the pawn, and he's not got anywhere to go. He can throw in a check. You just continue to bring your king in. I'm assuming that's the best move. Yeah, king e7, and yeah, black's fine. He sacrificed a knight for 2 pawns, so you've gained extra material, and white has nothing. Black's just got a really nice position here. But anyway, I played rook f7, and white didn't go for that sacrifice. White went for f4. He continues to play aggressively. He's striking at my centre. He wants to take and open his rook up, keep bringing more pieces into the attack. And I respond by retreating my queen to b6. Now, so far, before this move, I had played every move near enough perfect. What I mean by that is, according to the engine, I played the top move pretty much every move, but had been burning a lot of time up in the process. White had been playing aggressively and making threats, and I was just checking and double checking and triple checking, just making absolutely sure that all the moves I played weren't going to run into anything nasty. So already I was burning a lot of time up, which is a common problem of mine. And then this queen to b6 shows another common problem of mine, which is retreating. There's no reason to retreat this queen, right? Just develop your bishop, get it to a nice active square here, where it's doing defensive jobs and aggressive jobs as well in attacking this pawn. The engine even says I can grab this pawn and I'm fine. Like, that's literally how good my position is. I can go grabbing another pawn and I'm fine. But yeah, this bishop g4 would have been the best move. Just getting more pieces into the game is all I've got to do then is bring my rook in the game. But I just start getting worried. I start getting worried. He's getting, he's going to open this rook. He's got pieces around my king. In my head, I'm like, oh, I've got to get my queen back and defend. My queen's doing nothing over here, and I want to just get it back doing defensive duties. I want to bring it back to my side of the board, and it's just a really negative mindset. And it, rather than me having the initiative, what you do is when you retreat, you now give your opponent the initiative. It's almost wasting a move. My queen was fine here. It was active. It was on the second rank, defending, attacking this pawn, attacking this pawn. I don't need to retreat it. Him having this big scary attack, it's all just in my head. He doesn't really have anything. So, yeah, it's a common problem of mine. We have a strong chess player at our club who I do a lot of study with and go to a lot of tournaments with, and he says it to me all the time. He says about me retreating. He notices in my games I start well, I get a good position, often go up in material, and then I just retreat. So it's a real psychological block there that I need to work on. That and managing my time are the two main factors. But yeah, anyway, I do retreat. White shuffles his king over to h1 because even though I retreated, he was stepping into a discovered check. Not that I was planning to utilise that anytime soon anyway, because I didn't really have much. I mean, I like my pawn here anyway, but all I had was, White did something. Check, he steps, I can push the pawn or take, whatever. I'm not really going to gain much from this. I wouldn't have utilised that, so White playing king to h1 helps me in the fact that it wastes a move for him, so I can continue my development. But again, very negative. As I mentioned before, the bishop wants to be coming to a nice active square where it can be doing both defensive and attacking work. But I put it on a defensive post where it's just, doing defensive duties here on the 7th rank. F takes. And I was happy to see this on the board because, even though taking with this pawn positionally looks nice because you're, got these two pawns in the centre together, protecting each other and blocking this bishop in. Knight takes, which is what I played, which is clearly better here because it centralises this knight. This knight is now a beautiful knight, pretty much as strong as a knight can be. There's no pawns what can kick it. You look at all these squares it's covering from the centre of the board. Look at that. It's just a beautiful, beautiful knight. It's doing defensive work. It can jump forward onto the attack. He's going to have to retreat his knight to try and kick it. So yeah, I'm happy to leave this pawn isolated and jump in with this knight because it just makes my knight so strong. Just wondering what the engine thought of those two moves. Wonder if it just backs me up. Yeah, knight takes e5, clearly the best move. And it keeps his rook blocked as well. We don't want to be opening our opponent's rook up. White then plays bishop to f3. I'm not sure what the intention was of this move, whether he was trying to bait me into taking or whether he wanted to try and do some tricky stuff by bringing his bishop down to here. I now play bishop g4, just challenging it. I guess I was getting a bit worried about him maybe bringing his bishop here and trying some tricky stuff. And yeah, I should have put my bishop on g4 in the first place. So you can see I've wasted a precious tempo putting it on d7 and then on g4. I should have been more positive in the first place going to g4. But yeah, I guess I'm just, blocking the bishop off, looking to trade. White plays rook c to d1, and I bring my final piece in the game with rook to d8, just supporting that pawn. I know my queen is currently defending the pawn from the rook, but obviously this queen's probably going to want to move at the minute, so it just seems the best square for the rook. Obviously there's this open c file, but now this knight's doing a job defending this rook can come over here at some point. I do want a rook behind that pawn, ideally. White now plays king to g2, and I figured his idea is that he wanted to play h3. He wants to kick my bishop. Obviously, he can't do that straight away because that would just simply lose a pawn. So I think he's just backing this square up so he can play h3. Therefore, I play queen to e6, which stops his idea of h3 and also centralises my queen, just improving it. And I believe in this position, or even if we just go back, I mean, if you look at the evaluation bar now, the engine is saying that I'm at -4, which is the equivalent of being a piece and a pawn up. So I'm currently a pawn up. It's basically saying my position's that good. It's almost like I've got an extra piece. I mean, you know, now his king stepped onto g2. He's blocked the only square his knight can go to. You know, his queen isn't so active, can only go on this diagonal. His knight can't go anywhere. Only square he can go, like I said, he's just stepped onto. So yeah, White's position not great, and my position very nice. But yeah, sorry, Queen e6, and then he just steps the king straight back again. I'm guessing he probably realises he ought to be getting this knight out. I now play rook to c7. As I mentioned earlier, this knight's now doing a job of defending this, so this rook can come to the seventh rank. Sorry, come to the c file and get active down the c file. It can probably lift up to the second rank and start doing some attacking jobs rather than just defensive work. White retreats his queen back to d2, and I believe it's about here where I start to panic on the clock. It's been a couple of months since I played this game. Shouldn't be leaving it so long because I forget, you know, how I felt at the time and what I was thinking. But I seem to recall this is the moment of the game where I'm panicking about the clock. I know I'm winning. I know I've got a good position, but I'm low on time and I'm panicking. And I really should just be taking this bishop, right? There's no reason to just not take this bishop and force a trade and simplify things. But I play knight to c4. And I'm guessing the idea is, as I explained before, this knight was beautiful on the central post. Well, it would be even better on e3, where it takes up another central outpost, but this time it's deeper into the enemy territory and it's doing a more aggressive job. And again, look at all those squares it would be covering on e3 there. And not to mention it's going to come with a fork of the rooks. So I play knight to c4, hitting the queen with a tempo, and then jump into e3. But already I'm starting to make mistakes because this pawn, you know, he's got 1, 2, and I've only got 1. So I have just lost a pawn in the process. White plays bishop to takes g4. Again, I should have traded that bishop off with check earlier. Don't know why I didn't. I take back with a queen. I now lose this pawn. And although I'm threatening this rook, the problem is he's now threatening this rook. So yeah, I've really balls this up fairly quickly. And my position not looking so good now. This knight is undefended. These two rooks are undefended. I'm getting low on time and things are starting to get tactical. That is not good. And yeah, so I play rook takes, queen takes. And again, he's threatening this knight. He's also threatening check to win the rook. So things getting pretty hairy. I take his rook. He checks and takes my rook. So at this point, it's still an equal game, really. White is probably now slightly better due to he has got his queen more active than mine. But my pawns are a bit better than his. It's probably about equal. Let's just see what. Yeah, so the computer evaluates this as pretty much equal. It says White's got a very, very, very slight advantage in human terms. That's nothing. But it's only equal if I step back to the 8th rank. Now, if I was to go to h6, which is what I did, that would be a massive blunder and lose the game on the spot, because White replied, Queen c1 check, forking the king and the knight, and I resigned on the spot because I made a massive blunder. And that's 2 games in a row now where I've made a blunder in the end game and basically threw a result away. I should have had a draw in the last round. I should have won this one, really. And both games thrown away by poor time management, which then led to a blunder in the end game. And yeah, it's not great, but you know, it is a weakness that I need to face up to, and I am working on it, and I am confident that I will get there. I'm confident that 2025 is going to be a big year on the chess scene for me. You got to keep the faith. You got to stay confident. I love this game, and I'm not going to stop no matter what. And yeah, I hope you've enjoyed the new video. Let me know what you think of the new format. And thanks for following as always. And yeah, I'll see you for the next game. Thanks a lot.